Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. Mortise and tenon joint is an extremely common joint, but there are times when a double mortise and tenon is even better, particularly in a joint like this where the rail meets the back leg. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm Rob Cosman and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help you take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, be sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and don't forget to turn on the notification on your mobile device so you'll know every time we release a new video. Good? All right, back to the bench. So we're clear, let me explain. This is what you would call a mortise and tenon. This should be in every furniture maker's toolkit. This is probably one of the most used, if not the most used joint, traditional joint in furniture. Very strong, has its application, and when it's used correctly, you can't beat it. This is a single mortise and tenon, this being the tenon, this being the mortise. And when it comes to double mortise and tenons, there's variations. This is what we would call inline, where you have a single tenon that's been divided in two. Another one would be where you have a tenon on this side and a tenon on that side. We'll cover that in a different video. Today we're going to talk about just an inline double mortise and tenon. All right, now, why use it? So the best example I can give you, this is a prototype of a chair I made for a school, oh my goodness, 30 years ago. It's been kicking around the shop. It's survived. It gets used to everything from stacking lumber to standing on. This joint right here is really stressed. If you think of how often somebody leans back on a chair like that and the amount of leverage that's being applied by this long stretcher on this joint, if that isn't really souped up, it's going to fail. And it's where one's in typical factory furniture, it always comes loose. So here's my line of thinking. If you use a single tenon, and this is your leg, the more surface area you have, the more glue surface you have. However, what you're also doing is you're excavating a big chunk of this leg. And as a result, you're going to weaken this piece. The idea is, what can you do that's not going to take too much away from either the tenon or the mortise? I say the tenon because you've got this big, thick piece of timber that has been reduced to this small piece. So it's always a balancing act. What I'm contending is this. If you split that tenon in two, it allows you to take what would otherwise be a great big hole and you put some material back in here, which now adds a bit more integrity to this section of the leg. Now you can also talk about the leverage factor. When you put this in, I'll give you a little physics lesson as best I can. Down here is your fulcrum. That's where it's being levered against. Out here is your effort. This is the pressure being pushed down. And down in here, or in this case, this piece right here, is your load. Now, the farther away you move the load from the fulcrum, just like a simple lever, where this is your fulcrum, and you're lifting up a rock, if you have the rock really close to the lever, and this is way out here, you get a lot of force. If you tried to do it like this, you might be able to fling it quite a distance, but you have very little effort or force being able to pick it up. So my thinking says, separate the two, put some integrity back into this section of the mortise, and also change the leverage around so that it makes for a much stronger joint because you're the fact that you are changing that leverage to work in your favor. In deciding where to use this and how to use this, you always want to take into account the kind of load that the joint is going to be put under. If this was a chair leg and this was a chair rail, then the majority of the force is being pushed on or applied like that. So you're going to build to thwart that. Another example I can show you is this. I have this leg going into this foot on my bench. If I had made I don't want to reduce the tenon too small or it would take that great big timber and reduce it to the size of the tenon. So I certainly wouldn't want a great big huge hole cut in this. So instead I made two, which allowed me to double my glue surface. Not that there's a lot of force being applied on that. It's essentially just being forced straight down. There could be a little bit of lateral force on it, but not much. But take all of that stuff into account when you're designing your joint, so that you're striking a good balance between the strength of the joint and the weakening of the members because of the hole you cut, or the fact that you've had to cut it down so small in order to get a tenon that fits appropriately into the opposite piece. Okay, first thing I want to do in laying out the joint is square up all of my pieces. I want the long edges to be straight and square, and I want the ends to be nice and square. All right, in laying this out, everything is all squared up. So first thing I need to determine is how wide am I going to make my tenon, my mortise, same thing. And in a situation like this where you're joining these two pieces, then your best bet is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That means you're going to have, in this case, 1/4 inch shoulder, 1/4 inch shoulder, and 1/4 inch tenon. I might not be right on, but I'll make sure it is when I do it. Because when you come over here and cut your mortise, it doesn't do any good if you've got a great big huge mortise with little wee skinny shoulders on the outside. So you try to make it as uniform as possible where there is no obvious weak point. So I've got to determine how far in, and again I want to make sure I don't want to take too much strength away from this, but the longer it goes in, the more glue surface I have. And I'm going to guess to say on something this size, if we went in there 3/4 inch, I think that would be enough. So I'll set my marking gauge for 3/4 inch, and I'm going to scribe a line, all the way around what will be the piece that has the tenons. Now, I need to have a bit of a shoulder, which means I don't want to have the mortise coming right to here and the edge of the board doing right to there. Chances are it's not going to be very neat. So we always want a little bit of a shoulder to cover it. Don't need a lot. So in the case of this, I'm going to go with 1/8 inch. So we'll leave 1/8 inch out here, and then we'll do the same thing down here, 1/8 inch. And we're going to chop these, or cut these as a hollow chisel mortiser, but we'll lay it all out beforehand. So there's where one shoulder is going to be, and there's where the other shoulder will be. And we can do all of this on the tenon portion, then we'll just transfer the lines over here and cut the mortises. Now what we have to decide is, if we're going to make a double, how much material do we need in the middle? We don't want these individual tenons to be too weak. So I have approximately 3 inches to deal with. Well, I could go 1 inch, 1 inch, and 1 inch, but I don't really need that much material in here. If we went 1 1/4 inches and 1 1/4 inches, that would leave us 1/2 inch, and I think that is plenty. So we'll go ahead and draw that in. So this is going to be our waist, this is waist, and this is waist. So we'll just transfer this over here. Try to see somewhere where I haven't already made a mark. And we'll just put a couple of ticks on here. Now you could chop these by hand. If you have a hollow chisel mortiser, it's a lot quicker. So our mortises are going to be here and here. I actually go in there and just, for the sake of you being able to see it and me remembering when I get to the hollow chisel mortiser where to chop. Okay, this is going to be preserved. This will be the part that will hold this thing and give it back some integrity. All right. That's good. When you're ever using a hollow chisel mortiser, you don't want to do a partial hole. What I mean is, I've got to go from this line to that line, so I'll do the 2 outside ones first. You want to keep it moving. It's the chips coming out that help to keep the chisel cool. Now I'll go to the other side And I'll split that one in half. And then I'll go right down through the middle of this one. That way your chisel doesn't have a tendency to get forced off to one side, which you don't really want to happen. Hey, if you like this video, we have more. Our newsletter has subscriber-only content, monthly discount on tools, and anything we bring out that's new, subscribers get first crack at it. Click on the link below. Let's get back to work. Now, I'll just use my smaller mortise chisel just to scrape away some of the loose pieces at the bottom. It doesn't matter what the actual bottom looks like because I'm not going to touch it anyway. Now we got a nice clean mortise, so we can go ahead and set up and cut those tenons to fit. Might have made that too deep. Now I'm going to use my sleeve on top of my fence, and that'll give me a little more reference surface. That's enough. You should check to make sure that that's standing plumb. That's good. Now I'm going to cut the outside ones first so that the waste just falls away. And I'm just going to get close on this. That was a lucky guess. Transfer those lines. Now I use my combination square because it allows me to have the rule go right to the bottom. Can't do that with a regular square. Make sure this is standing plumb. Make sure those inside corners are nice and clean. Now if we come in here and just cut a little wall. Make sure there's no debris left. I might have to go in and just do a little bit of work on that shoulder line. I'm not sure that I hit it with the table saw as close as I could have. Try this. Might have left I did. Left one of these just a little bit too wide. Take a little bit of material off both sides of these. I can still see the pencil mark. Take a little bit off of this side as well. Easier to trim the tenon than it is to go in and alter the mortise. There we go. Now, give that a bit of a tap. Now, I didn't cut that as deep as I should have. I'll just check it real quick. Oh, we didn't quite make 3/4. And that's a strong 3/4. Well, you have two options. I could go in and I could make that deeper. Yeah, that's a lot of work for the little bit of gain. Or I could simply come in here and just shorten these a little bit, which is a whole lot easier to do. Now, since I'm planing across the end grain, I have to do something on the opposite side so that I don't break the fibers out. So we'll just cut a little chamfer on the back side. And then just go to the shooting board and shorten those the appropriate amount. There you go. All right, so there's your double mortise and tenon. I think it's a whole lot stronger, and more importantly, it preserves this piece and doesn't weaken it. You can imagine how weak these sides would be if that piece was missing. There really wouldn't be much to hold that together. Mind you, you could glue it, and that would, once it's glued, that would certainly strengthen it, but I like to have that extra piece of original material still there. There you go. If you like my work and enjoy my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos and help take your woodworking to the next level. I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the link below, the chisel and plane icon, it'll take you to our site and introduce you to all the tools that we actually manufacture right here in our shop. It'll also give you information on our online and in-person workshops.